Hello, Crazy Corb again, coming to say hello. And I'd like to talk to you about something. I'd like to tell you about something, but I'm hoping that you'll subscribe. And if you like what I say, hit like. I need those things, folks. Come on, subscribe. Um, I want to talk about Elysian Park. This was the first love-in LA, Los Angeles, following the first love-in San Francisco at Golden Gate Park. It was an interesting combination. These both were following Woodstock. And while Woodstock had the most amazing conglomeration of music and people and blocked highways and ruined farmland, and people are still pissed about it after 50 years. These two, the Elysian Park and the Golden Gate Park love-ins, were completely different. Number one, there weren't more than 40 or 50,000 people that showed up at either one. Number two, at Elysian Park, the police thought it was a religious service because it was Easter Sunday, which we just had last week. So last week would have been the 49th anniversary of that time. I drove a busload of people to it. I've talked about this before. And had a friend of mine remind me that it wasn't just the bus I drove and the bus that followed me. There were cars following the buses. And he was in a car, he was pretty sure, but it's been so far back he can't remember for sure. I actually think he was in a car following us. But this was at a time when, even though I tried really hard not to stand out, I had shaved my head, wore a whole bunch of black material that I kind of draped and wrapped and tied it into like a robe. And I had a stuffed bird on my shoulder that hung upside down because it refused to stand up. Got my ticket for driving without headlights at 4 in the morning on my way to the park. Hadn't gone 2 blocks yet. While I was getting my ticket, there was 100 people on the bus that were rolling joints and smoking joints while I was getting my ticket. An amazing time, an interesting time. I drove not knowing the directions to the park. When I pointed that out to the bus, this kid came up and sat down right behind me, and he says, "I know how to get there. I'll give you directions." And I said, "Cool." I handed him a joint. He was probably 14, 15, something like that. And he gave me directions all the way, and he kept me supplied in joints. I took LSD. I have no recollection if I gave him some, or if he asked for some, or if he took any. I don't know. I'm sure the kid had a great time. I think he went back with us, but only 13 people rode back with us. So it shows you what they thought of my driving and my condition. I had, with my partner, I had bought a quantity of LSD that had been improperly mixed. And I had yet to fix the improper mixture. So when you took one, you took none, 20. Nobody really knew. What I did was I capped them in double-aught caps instead of the number 5. So you basically were taking a shot of taking a whole bunch at once, or, whatever. Anyway, I knew you'd get off. That was the main thing. I eventually took the remainder because my partner took his and got so high that he passed out probably half of our acid at the park. All you had to do is walk into our tent and say, can I have some LSD, please? And he would hand it to you. The concept of money never entered into that whole situation. I wasn't angry. Jim was a good friend and a good heart. And like he said, who cares if we make any money on this? Okay, I did, but I did care. But I was making enough money, it didn't make any difference. I really don't understand where my money went because I sure as hell didn't ever have any. But I also was buying a lot of drugs, so I paid for it somehow. Anyway, to go back to where we were talking, the whole thing with the Elysian Park Love-In, Easter sunrise, we were showing that Los Angeles wasn't to come too far behind San Francisco. Yes, San Francisco was the place everybody went to in the early 60s. Everybody went to San Francisco. They even wrote songs about it. You know, if you come to San Francisco, be sure you're wearing flowers in your hair. When you went to Haight-Asbury and you walked down Haight Street, it was shoulder to shoulder people. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It never changed. Shoulder to shoulder people. Crowds. Always moving. Some people lived in parking spaces. They would put their quarters in and keep it paid up and put a chair or a bed or whatever, and that was where they lived. Other people had apartments. Some friends of mine and I rented a stairwell right on the corner of Haight-Asbury in the drugstore there. We had the stairwell. We had the second and third floors stairwell. That's what we had. That's what we rented. And yes, people could come running through there in a case of a fire or something, but for the most part, it was ours, and we cooked in a hot plate and the whole 9 yards. I had other friends that had houses. It was expensive to rent a Victorian. Not like now. Now the Victorians sell for $2, $3, $4, $5 million. Back then they rented for $300, $400 a month. My friend Harry made good money buying and selling property. As he put it, who knew I could make a living buying and selling property? And Harry's a smart man, college educated, articulate, liked to write, wrote for I believe it was the Herald Examiner. He was a good man. He is a good man. I should rephrase that. I like Harry. He strikes me at times as a tad arrogant or a tad pompous, but there's been a long time where we hadn't spoken, and when I established the two of us talking to each other, it was easy for me to prove to him who I was because he didn't believe. I disappeared from him for 40 years. I'm glad I'm back in touch. I would like to actually visit and be more in touch. Physically reach out to him and shake his hand, thank him for numerous things that he did for me back in the day, and also enjoy some of what he does now. It's not all just me. Harry does things. And he got me in touch with Welcome, or Barry did. I have friends down in Long Beach that really enjoy some of my stories because it reminds them of what we had gone through 50 years ago. I do realize that 50 years ago was 50 years ago. And back then, typewriters were the way we communicated. Now we do it with telephones. Things change, shit happens. You just have to go along with the flow, but you don't have to forget what happened. You can still remember how the roses smelled back in the day. The air in Los Angeles is better now than it was 50 years ago. Even though when you fly into L.A. or San Francisco, either one, you fly into sort of a bright orange Q-tip top, and in you go, and then you're breathing that shit. But that's coming from me who hides out in Oregon, we have blue skies, clear air, you know, clear water, clean water, whatever. I mean, however you want to put it. Things have changed. That's okay. I understand all that. But the whole thing with the Elysian Park, when we had live bands there, we also had tape music. A radio station put it on. I had a tent pitched next to the Mamas and Papas. It was Jim Varick's tent, but the whole crew from Long Beach Community College were kind of staked out there. I wandered the field. I was dressed in my robe and wore a pair of tank glasses, and I was so high I was watching trees disappear in clumps of 5 or 10. That used to be the whole thing with me. I was called Sir Drop-A-Lot because I did drop a lot. And I enjoyed it. I had a good time. I'm not going to say that if I had gone back in time, I would act the same way. I'd be wealthy now, I know that. But I don't think I would change a whole lot. I don't need to take LSD. I haven't needed to take LSD in 40 years. And yeah, you can say that it's flashbacks that I get, but I dropped a lot in the 60s. Even the phrase, drop a lot, means something then that it doesn't mean now. People don't even understand what the drop acid means. They don't know that that's how you phrase taking it. Because back then when you dropped it, it could have been on a sugar cube, it could have been in a cup, it could have been with Kool-Aid, it could have been on a cap or in a cap, or it could have been a tablet. I went through the whole phase. I even took some that was Sandoz that I had saw the bottle. All that happens. But please subscribe. Let me know what you'd like to hear. You want to hear more about San Francisco? I'll tell you more that I know. Not a whole lot, but some. And subscribe. Say you're happy. Say hello. Tell me who the hell you are. Tell me all that. Thank you. And subscribe.